Welcome back to Total Disclosure, everybody. My name's Tyler, and I'm the host and creator of the program. Today is our season finale episode. We have the wonderful and amazing attorney, one of a kind, absolute legend in the field, Daniel Sheehan. And we are about to have an amazing conversation. But before we do that, because it is the season finale, I'm going to be taking a break. Season finale is kind of a loose word. I guess it's really, I'm just taking a month and a half-ish break. Episodes will come out, but they're going to be omnibus episodes. So we won't really be missing any weeks, but some of them will be omnibus episodes. And since it's the season finale, I thought that we should do a giveaway. Now, to be entered in this giveaway, you do have to become a member of the channel, and you could do that for as low as $2.99. So if you become a member by June 15th, after that, the deadline closes. So June 16th, the deadline closes. What we're giving away is a bottle of BioMind, which is a sponsor, valued at $60. It is a all-natural herbal supplement, including performance mushrooms. No, not the trippy type, the legal type. They make me have this kind of motivation, drive, and energy. I love it. I really do. It's changed my life completely. It's, brought back my clarity, no more brain fog. I drink less coffee. It's just been amazing. So we've already made the box out to somebody, put a little UFO on there. So we just got to deliver it. Also, we'll be giving away this Quadcast microphone. That was the Design Award winner for 2019. And we'll be giving away both of those to 2 people. First place, and we'll do like a random drawing of each. So it's like a random number generator. But before we get Danny in here, I just want to talk a little bit about him. So Danny is a constitutional and public interest lawyer. He's a public speaker. He's a political activist and educator. Now, Sheehan grew up in New York, Warrensburg, New York. He attended Northeastern, which is here in Boston, before transferring to Harvard here in Boston, in Cambridge, and he graduated in 1967. He attended Harvard Law School, graduating in 1970 with a Juris Doctor's degree. He was briefly a member of the Army ROTC, but resigned. Over his career, Sheehan's been embarking on the biggest and baddest cases there are. The Pentagon Papers, the Silkwood case, the Greensboro Massacre, the Lepenska bombings. He worked on some of the JFK stuff. He's now involved in the UFO world. He represented Lou Elizondo. He represented Dr. Greer in the Disclosure Project. He has been main counsel for the Disclosure Project. So he's seen, heard, and done so much work. And as of recently, with the New Paradigm Institute and the Romero Institute, he is paving the way for a new reality. Give it up for our season finale guest, Mr. Danny Sheehan. Danny, welcome to the show.
Terrific. Thank you, Ty. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really, I said this to you before, and I mean it in no joking way. You are among the people that I've, when I make my top 10 lists of people in the field that I'd like to speak with, you're always on that top 10 list. So I really want to just start. I know this is something that you've probably done a million times, but for everybody who may not know who you are by now, can you give us a background and start by telling us a bit about your background, how you became involved in legal cases related to both major historical events and UFOs and the paranormal, etc.?
Sure. There's 2 sort of parallel tracks, Ty, to this. That it all started basically when I was at Harvard Law School. And we began the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review back in 1968. And I had initiated a case. One of the things I maintained at the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review when we created it was that in addition to doing just scholarly articles, we sent out letters to lawyers all around the country saying if they had any really challenging and interesting constitutional law questions, to please forward them to our law review. And we could gather lots of little eager beavers at Harvard Law School and work on these projects. And we actually initiated the case from the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review that ended up establishing the right of journalists to protect their confidential news sources. And it went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, that case that we initiated off the law review.
Wow.
So the law firm on Wall Street that represents NBC News came to the law school and recruited me because I was the one that had actually initiated the case out of the law review, and I was the one that did all the briefs. And so I got recruited by the number one corporate litigation law firm in the world at the time on Wall Street, Cahill, Gordon, Sinet, Reindel, and Old. And I went down to New York right out of Harvard Law School and was preparing the briefs, not only for the NBC, which was the journalists that we were representing, but also for ABC and CBS, and also for the New York Times and the Washington Post that were filing amicus briefs. And so the bottom line is I got to meet Jim Goodell, who was the general counsel for the New York Times. And so that after we won that case at the United States Supreme Court level, when the New York Times got the Pentagon Papers, they called us. Actually, I was the one that received the call from Jim Goodell to help them deal with the Pentagon Papers. So we did the Pentagon Papers case at the Cahill firm, took the New York Times account away from Lord Day and Lord, which was the law firm that traditionally represented the New York Times, but they had refused to protect them in publishing the Pentagon Papers. In fact, threatened to turn them into the FBI if they didn't give them back. So
why would they do that?
Right in the midst of that kind of extraordinarily interesting historical event, where we ended up getting possession of 47 volumes of top secret Pentagon report prepared by the Rand Corporation. And I was one of the few people, I guess, alive that's read all 47 volumes of the Pentagon Papers. So that we put together the articles to publish in the New York Times. And because of that, I ended up establishing a pretty good relationship with investigative journalists because we had done that original case. And because I became familiar with the details of the Pentagon Papers, I began to get an inside look at the national security state that was functioning here in the United States. And I realized that there was this dark side to American foreign policy and what it is that they were doing in secret that had to do with political assassination programs, heroin smuggling, illegal weapons shipments all over the world. I discovered all of these things. And then I got recruited out of the Cahill firm when the Watergate burglary took place. I got recruited by F. Lee Bailey, the attorney who represented James McCord, who was the CIA wiretapping specialist that got arrested in the Watergate Hotel. And I was put in charge of trying to figure out why these people were in the Watergate Hotel and what they were doing. And ended up, James McCord is the one that wrote the letter to Judge Sirica blowing the whistle on Richard Nixon and the Plumbers Unit. So I ended up being in this kind of extraordinary set of circumstances right out of Harvard Law School.
At a super young age.
But I ended up, I didn't want to stay at Bailey's law firm because I realized that the reason that he knew what was going on in the Watergate Hotel is because he was on this short list of lawyers to represent CIA people who got caught engaged in covert operations stateside. I didn't want to have anything to do with that. And so I left and I went back to Harvard. I graduated from Harvard College in '67, where I studied on American.
I live in Boston, so.
Pardon?
I live in Boston.
Oh, yeah. So So the bottom line is I ended up going back to Harvard to do a master's degree in comparative social ethics, trying to understand why it is that I was functioning on kind of a different wavelength from both the law firm where I was and with Bailey's office. The bottom line is I ended up getting recruited out of the Harvard Divinity School where I was studying comparative social ethics. I got recruited to become legal counsel at the United States Jesuit headquarters, at the Jesuit order in their social ministry office. which is their major public policy office. And it was there that I was the one in charge of drafting public policy positions for the largest order in the Catholic Church and the Jesuit order. And we had organized a coalition of the top 54 major religious denominations in the United States to organize a major task force in Washington, D.C. to do public policy discussions to try to counter the extreme right-wing Christian fundamentalist, kind of Christian nationalist operations that were going on, to have kind of a progressive, a spiritually oriented worldview be reflected in some of the policies. And it was in that context that we got to meet Jimmy Carter, when he was running for the presidency in 1976. We brought him in to meet with all 54 of the major leaders of the national religious organizations. And we got him to agree in that meeting that if he were elected, that he would in fact issue an executive order cutting off all military funding from the United States to any foreign dictator that was systematically involved in violating the human rights of his own citizens. And after he did get elected successfully, we pressured him, and he did cut off the military funding to Anastasio Somoza in Nicaragua, and he cut off the military funding to the Shah of Iran. And so both of those governments fell because of their lack of military support from the U.S. And it was there that when he got elected, as I mentioned, the first thing that Jimmy Carter did was he contacted the head of the Central Intelligence Agency and demanded that he get briefed in on the UFO issue.
And that was George H.W. Bush at the time.
It was George Sr. And he was the head of the CIA under President Gerald Ford, who took over when Nixon was forced to resign over the Watergate scandal. So the bottom line is that that I was there when President Carter demanded to get briefed in on the UFO issue, and the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, George Bush Sr., refused to brief him, saying that he had no need to know. And so what happened is President Carter then asked the Congress to investigate this, the whole issue of UFOs and what potential connection they might have to any extraterrestrial civilization. And I was contacted by the Congressional Research Service, Science and Technology Division, Dr. Marcia Smith, and she asked me to become special counsel to that investigation for no great cosmic reason, but she just wanted to know whether, as legal counsel at the Jesuit National Headquarters in their social policy office, whether I might be able to get access to the Vatican archives to determine what information they might have that could supplement whatever it is our Congressional Research Service people had. And that was the way that I got involved professionally with the UFO issue. And so as of January of 1977, I ended up being able to get access to the classified portions of Project Blue Book. This is the over 700 cases that Project Blue Book was not able to even preposterously try to explain away as swamp gas.
Were these the ones that J. Allen Hynek was not getting? Or were these the ones
he was getting those, but what they were doing is every time they had a sighting that was totally impossible to explain away, where you had dozens of highly credible witnesses who'd seen it, they had photographs of them, that they had radar sightings and everything, things that they couldn't explain away. They kind of shuffled off into this category of special cases, and there were 700 of them. And they put them into a classified portion of Project Blue Book. And I had asked to be able to get access to those as special counsel to the investigation we were doing. And so I ended up getting to see actual photographs of active crash retrievals, UFO crash retrieval photographs. And so when I saw them, I realized what was really going on. And so we went to the National Council of Churches out of Jesuit headquarters and tried to get the 54 major religious denominations here in the United States to set up a special task force to try to get out ahead of this issue, to really formulate policy to deal with an extraterrestrial civilization before it kind of fell upon us. And that they just declined to do it at that time in 1977. But I had become convinced that it was true from my having seen the photographs in the classified portions of Blue Book.
Ad read. Dentia Herbal's BioMind. Introducing the ultimate cognitive enhancement solution, BioMind. Today's video is exclusively brought to you by our sponsor, Dentia Herbals. Unlock your brain's full potential with a powerful blend of 9 meticulously selected plants and mushrooms, each backed by peer-reviewed research for their cognitive boosting benefits and safety. Dentia Herbal's formula combines organic full-spectrum powders and potent standardized extracts, ensuring that you receive the optimal concentration of each ingredient's cognitive enhancing compound, carefully selecting the most desirable parts of each plant and mushroom to create a harmonious blend that supports your mental clarity and focus. But that's not all. They infuse each bottle with personal intention of improving the lives, the minds, and overall greatness of each of their customers. Because of their commitment to your well-being every step of the way, you're going to get an exclusive 25% off your order via www.dentiaherbals.com using our code Total Disclosure at checkout. All the links will be in the description or on the screen.
So I began an investigation to determine what it is that was really going on. And because of that, I ended up getting retained by Dr. John Mack, at Harvard, who had written a book basically about a number of his major interviews with high-ranking military officials, law enforcement officers, others who had had these direct, close encounters with UFOs, and he had attempted to write an article for the New England Journal of Medicine about this extraordinary group of people who certainly was no career builder inside the military to report that you'd encountered a UFO. But the bottom line is that I ended up representing Dr. John Mack in his confrontation with the Harvard faculty that occurred in 1994. And in that context, I got introduced to basically all of the major players in the whole field of UFO studies. And I got to meet Bud Hopkins. I got to meet, virtually everybody. Dave Jacobs. I got to meet Stanton Friedman. I got to meet, all the people that were involved. And Linda Moulton Howe and Stephen Greer and and all of the rest of the people. And so I started, because I was preparing witnesses to present at Harvard University in kind of a grand rounds to this special faculty committee that got put together to basically excoriate Dr. John Mack for his having written this book. They thought that this was actually, undermining the credibility of Harvard University to have one of their major, the chairman of their clinical psychiatry department, be talking publicly about it. And so the bottom line is I ended up getting to meet everybody and interview everybody and became legal counsel for the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research. And I got fully involved professionally in this.
And not only were you getting to talk to people like Stanton Friedman and, everybody, Jacques Vallée, you were getting
Wendell Stevens, all
of them. But you were getting to speak to them as as a capacity as an attorney.
That's
so
right.
There's this different aspect there, and with the compelling evidence, that you've seen, I mean, you're a secondhand witness to a degree yourself. You've seen what you deem as absolutely credible evidence that there are crash retrieval programs. And I know that you've been involved with people like Lou Elizondo and the Disclosure Project with Dr. Greer.
Yes.
I think you've covered enough of that where we don't have to dive too much deeper into it. If I hear one more person ask you when Lou's book is coming out, I'm going to roll my head. It'll come out when it comes out, everybody. It'll come out when it comes out. But I do want to talk to you about some of the things that you've discussed about, say, the galactic, is there such thing? It was a Reddit question that was actually submitted, and I wanted to read a couple of them because there were some of them were really, really good. So we'll start with this one by Surgeon of Steel 419, and if you could prioritize the phenomena down to three main facts, what would they be?
Well, I guess the most important fundamental fact is that we have now just recently our human scientific community, just in the last 20 years, basically, have finally come to acknowledge that planets actually exist outside of our solar system. That's a huge Rubicon that they've crossed now. That they would never acknowledge. They were being dominated by the scientific, logical, positivist, materialist worldview. And until they actually saw them and could actually basically photograph them and deal with, they weren't willing to acknowledge they even existed. So that's an extraordinarily important thing that's happened in just the last 25 years or so.
Right.
Secondly, they've now come to realize that there are vastly more stars in our Milky Way galaxy than they had thought, and that there are vastly more galaxies in our universe than they had previously thought. And this is now because of the Hubble, the Planck telescope, and more especially the James Webb telescope that's up now. And so that you're starting to get acknowledgments that it's absolutely impossible, it's ridiculous for people to continue to insist that the likelihood of life elsewhere in the universe is problematic, and so that those two sets of things are extraordinarily important. And now that, very importantly, thirdly, you have extraordinarily high level of military officials, intelligence officials inside the United States government that are coming forward, and they're providing first-hand and second-hand direct information about the existence of a long-standing crash retrieval, UFO crash retrieval program that has been going on now for decades, and the assertion that they have actually recovered more than one extraterrestrial, non-human origin spacecraft, and that they've recovered bodies in connection with these spacecraft that they've tested and have determined that they are non-human occupants of these spacecraft. Now it should be a total headline in the front page of the New York Times, but the bottom line is, because there's been such an aggressive program that has been mounted by an element deep within the national security state of our country to keep this secret, and they've mounted this aggressive campaign to embarrass, attack, undermine, ridicule anybody who would suggest that this is true, that it's still difficult to get a lot of the mainline institutions to come forward and fully acknowledge that this is what's happening. But this is where we are now, that it's absolutely obvious now that not only has our government, an element deep within the national security state, been actively involved in attempting to retrieve UFOs if they fall down from the sky, but there appears to be evidence, growing evidence, that there's been an active campaign to try to bring them down so that they can get their hands on them, because they want to get a hold of the technology.
That's what I was going to say.
That's right.
That they so do you really quickly, just a side note really quickly, do you believe that they are using some form of direct energy weapon to possibly bring these down?
It's I have to be extremely careful here, because I don't want to speculate about this.
Right, it is hard to speculate in that degree.
There's growing indications that need to be pursued to determine whether or not we've crossed that line, where rather than just retrieving them, if for some happenstance that they happen to have crashed, if they're engaged in kind of a more aggressive program to try to bring these things down, that is of such extraordinary additional importance that I need to be extremely careful about asserting things until we get more evidence on that.
Absolutely, and that completely makes sense. So, yeah, definitely finish up with what you were saying. I'm sorry.
Well, no,
Because direct, well, okay, so directed energy weapons are, I think, just they're becoming more in the vernacular. And, I know you can't say it, but even things like Havana syndrome have been now talked about in, in the National Security Council. And there's a little bit, Dr. Gary Nolan's work. I'm sure you've talked to him. There is, it's something that we are growing, um, turning our attention to as a society. I hope, and I think it's coming with the UFO phenomenon as a package deal. But I want to talk to you about you speak about these non-human intelligence, various five specifically,
yes.
with very much conviction. Um, is there a degree of some sort of galactic federation? Sorry, a car alarm was just going off. But
Okay.
do you know if there's any coordination between these five races, and that is one is dominant and yada yada yada? Because I
Well,
think you talk about
well,
this.
it's an extremely interesting question. I know, Ty, that based upon some of my direct face-to-face interviews with people who I find to be extraordinarily credible, and that I would be convinced that if I were to present them in front of a jury, which is what I do, and have done over the last 50 years. I've done trials in 23 different states, in dealing with other dimensions of legal issues, all the way from the Wounded Knee occupation to, Iran Contra and Karen Sokol case and others that people know about. And I know that if I select witnesses whom I'm convinced, if I place them in front of a jury and subjected them to direct examination and exposed them to any thoroughgoing cross-examination that anyone might be able to mount against them, that they would convince a jury that they were telling the truth, and that they have given me accounts of, for example, Barbara Lamb, who is an extraordinarily credible person, a woman who's like just now 90 years old,
Right.
who has been interviewing people who have, hold sincere beliefs that they've had encounters, face-to-face encounters with UFOs and the occupants, and have described them to her in some detail. And she actually recounted to me that we are now in possession of audio recordings of her interviews of these people. She has now left these with us at the New Paradigm Institute so that we can protect these things for the future. So we've been able to hear the detailed descriptions of people of having face-to-face encounters with the beings, and Barbara Lamb herself has told me the story that she was, after years and years of interviewing all these people, she had never actually had a direct encounter with the UFO or any extraterrestrial beings, and so that she was kind of longing to get to have such an experience. And one afternoon, she came into her house, her apartment, from being out in the garden, and here was a UFO person standing right in the middle of her living room. It was a reptilian, over 6 feet tall, almost 7 feet tall. Extraordinarily benign, very, very friendly, and positive being. Just telepathically communicated to her. Look, you had always wanted to confirm that we were real. And so we wanted to make sure that you were affirmed in your knowledge of it. And she sat right there and told me the story, and described the being. And there wasn't any question. This wasn't a person. This wasn't a human being. This was a humanoid, a reptilian, almost between 6 and 7 feet tall, totally benign. And she described the being to me. And just
And
I had
and yeah,
and I had another interview with a fellow who was on his deathbed, Albert Stein, his name was. He was a clerk typist for Project Blue Book for decades, and he ended up actually going with his commander of Project Blue Book, the top secret portion of Project Blue Book, to S4, and was actually present during an interview of a live ET. And this was a again, between 5 feet, 5.5 feet tall. They had him in a blue, like a jumpsuit.
So they're obviously recording this.
Well, this what I was saying is that it was in addition to this one particular interview that they had index cards with notes being taken of interviews, a series of interviews with this being, and had notes that were being taken. And so all I've said is that in light of the fact that they're clearly doing interviews of this being at S4, it's completely unimaginable that they wouldn't have recorded them, right, and filmed some of these. Now, the particular, there's a couple of different videos that have been running around of people saying, here's a live interview of these. I have not yet confirmed that those are real, but I do know from my interview of Albert that I find him to be extraordinarily credible. He was on his deathbed, literally. He called me and wanted to convey this information to me before he died. And he described this is a tall, bald, large head, with large eyes, the classic tall gray.
Gray.
So we know that those are two firsthand accounts that I have. And I say, and I've interviewed many people as legal counsel for the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research, have given detailed descriptions. For example, one of the other people, Melinda Leslie, who had
I know her. She's been on the show. Yeah.
Encounter with one of the what they call insectoids. The mantis people. Were like almost 7 feet tall, very tall, very skinny, very thin, and that they remind people almost of like a praying mantis. That this is a third type, and then there are of course myriad stories from very credible people about the little tiny, short, 3.5 feet tall grays.
Yeah.
That they look just like the tall grays.
Terry Lovelace,
same eyes, etc. So that you have the short grays, the tall grays, you have the reptilians, and you have the mantis people. Now, and then there's this whole array of stories, Billy Meyer being one of the major promoters of these, but there's lots of other people who've given these accounts of encountering beings that look just like us. And they consistently report these beings having come from the Pleiades, the constellation of the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades. They come from one of the star systems there. And all I'm saying is that one is so, if you can imagine, it's harder to believe.
Yeah, isn't it?
Others,
right?
Because that means that these are like humans. These are like human beings. They look just exactly like us, except that they have larger earlobes apparently and other things. But this is a fifth particular species, which is not a non-human species. But these others are non-human. So that we have detailed accounts of these, and that what we're doing at the New Paradigm Institute is investigating all of this, trying to figure out, how to establish the information so that regular people who are just coming into contact with this whole field can have credible information and knowledge about these things. That's one of the other areas of the many. Like we have 8 different major areas that the New Paradigm Institute is working on. We're working on legislation. We've been deeply involved in working with the legislation that's been passed by the United States Senate and more recently by the House, a smaller version of it. We're working on having a second iteration of the Schumer-Rounds bill drafted in the United States Senate. We're working on the legislation now to have much muscled up witness protection, UFO, UAP witness protection legislation.
Right.
We're also we'll be representing individual whistleblowers to bring them forward to testify in front of Congress and other places. And we're working on trying to design an entire new paradigm to try to integrate the reality of this information into our human worldviews, so that we can help the institutions of our world, religious institutions, political institutions, economic institutions, social, cultural institutions, integrate this kind of extraordinary new reality
Right.
But so we've set up an entire institute to do this in Washington, D.C. We're virtually the only civilian or non-government group inside the federal enclave, right on Capitol Hill. Our offices are immediately next door to the United States Supreme Court and the United States Senate building that houses the Senate Intelligence Committee. So we can walk right out our door and meet with the Senate staff and the House staff. So we're
That's
deeply
nice.
engaged in the
Yeah.
process.
So that allows you that networking, and that, um, it kind of affords you hurdle challenges and all that. And I did want to ask you, so there's somebody who came out recently, and I wasn't going to ask this, but you brought up whistleblowers, and um, that have you? I just can you answer this with just a yes or no? Do
Yeah.
you know who Jason Sands is, and have you spoken to him?
Yeah, I shouldn't really be discussing this anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
I may
Is
have
that
I may
something
have
that's often?
erroneously made some reference there, but it's not appropriate for us to talk about which whistleblowers we're talking to until they've come public and we've officially represented them.
Okay. Yeah, because it's something that just came out recently in a
I know.
really weird way, and just kind of looking for some clarification on it, because you know we I am definitely on the side of a controlled disclosure, and I think what you're doing with the with this, I mean, maybe it wasn't always going to pass the first time. Maybe we always kind of knew that, um, but that was never going to not be something that was going to come up again and again and again, because once it was introduced, it's introduced, and you have people like yourself backing the fight and organizing citizens all around the world, and I think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing. So with that being said, you know, how do you think the how do you think that religion ties into the phenomena, and how people, because you talk about a chaos, a catastrophic disclosure,
Mm.
um, and a possible event that could occur, um, that we have no control over, and causes a catastrophic disclosure. Now, do you think religion would have a part to play in that?
No, very much so. Look, people that without being patronizing about law, I mean, the fact is that 99% of the people don't really have a clear understanding of what religion's really all about.
Right.
It's a whole kind of collection of mythology and fantasy and fiction and but very important dimensions of reality. But relegare, the Latin root for religion, relegare, means to relink. That's what's happened is when the intellect has evolved. Intellectus, the Latin root of which is to be able to distinguish the difference between. The evolution of the intellect in our human species has caused us to separate ourselves out from the rest of reality. That we have seen ourselves in dialectical relationship with other aspects of reality, the intellect, the ability to distinguish the difference between and to make rational connections between particular points. But the flip side of the evolution of the intellect has been this kind of onset of an extraordinary experience of alienation on the part of our sense of ourself from the rest of reality. Religion, relegare, is to relink us back to an integrated experiential encounter with all the rest of reality. Uh, that's what the major religious institutions have not, in fact, systematically shared with the regular lay people what we really understand about our human family, the kind of capacities that we have, the abilities that we have, the access to extraordinary faculties that we have of for example, telepathy, telepathic communication, psychic abilities, the teleportation. There's all kinds of, astral travel. There's all kinds of extraordinary capacities that are referred to, even in Christian traditions, as the talents. In Eastern religions, they're referred to as siddha, the ability to levitate, for example, the ability to transmute matter. There are these capacities that our human species has that have been kept secret, basically, by a lot of the major religious institutions. It's going to be extraordinarily important that they come forward and start to disclose themselves, knowledge that they have about the capacities of our human family, so that we can not feel so completely estranged from some of the faculties that are displayed by some of the extraterrestrial beings. That when extraterrestrial beings come and levitate and lift people up out of their beds and carry them up through the walls of their home into the UFO, the people are flabbergasted, and they tend to start thinking of these beings that, well, they must be some kind of spiritual beings. They must be kind of angels. There's this whole category that people have for those kind of capacities that are fundamentally separate and distinct from our human capacities. And that's just simply not true. And so that I think that the whole realm of religion, for example, the Catholic Church has issued an official statement as of November 10th of 2009, stating that in light of the discovery of more and more of these new exoplanets, it's now become clear that much earlier than had previously been anticipated, we are going to discover that there's life, intelligent life, or they said life elsewhere in the universe. And therefore, the time has arrived for us to begin a serious conversation of the profound philosophical and theological implications in questions that are posed to our human family by the discovery of life elsewhere in the universe. All this is completely true, and that this has to do with our place in the universe, how we fit into the cosmic scheme of things. And these are extraordinarily important conversations that we need to start having now, before we are kind of confronted by the existence of an extraterrestrial civilization that we're not prepared for.
Right.
And that's the process our institute is engaged in working on now.
Right. And do you think that, now a lot of people are citing that eminent domain would be the main component that keeps this thing not passable in its full capacity. People like Brandon Fugel, who own places like Skinwalker Ranch, Jacques Vallée, who owns various samples, Gary Nolan. Right. So, they're worried about where does the line in the sand, because the government would have control over it if they absolutely wanted to, and they would be able to control what the fair market value is, based on that. So what are how do we navigate this and make it so that we meet halfway, if you will?
I don't think halfway is a good idea. I mean, that it's like saying, we've kidnapped 3 of your children. You can have one of them back. Which one do you want? That's not where we're going. On this thing,
it's got to be all or nothing.
The bottom line is this is not the access to knowledge that there exists an entire extraterrestrial civilization of sentient, highly intelligent, and highly technologically developed civilization of non-human beings, and that they're coming and going from our planet, is not a piece of information that anybody has the right to seize and claim and keep secret from everybody else, and then try to exploit it to make a personal profit for themselves. Like, what, we're going to copyright the fact that we know that there's an extraterrestrial civilization? And anybody who's going to try to utilize the information or get access to the information has to pay for that.
That's like selling stars. It means nothing.
That's right.
It means nothing.
And the bottom line is that it's true that a major source of the resistance in our real world, as the way that they deal with giving campaign contributions to people and threatening to withhold the campaign contributions, etc. The private aerospace corporations Lockheed Martin, Radiance
Mm-hmm.
Technology, and some others who actually have gotten access to or are attempting to get access to some of this technology from the UFOs so that they can patent it and own it, and that they can, own it. The shareholders can own it into the future, so that anybody who wants to get access to the information has to pay them. They have a very high motive to try to keep this secret. Now, that's one whole element, but it's a very effective element. And very importantly, they have untoward amounts of influence on, Michael Turner, for example, who is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee.
Right.
And they have extraordinary influence over Michael Rogers, who is the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. Both of them come from districts where there's a heavy dominant influence by these private aerospace corporations and are major campaign contributors to those two people. That's rather a mundane dimension of this, but it's highly important. There's another element, however, which is the national security state people. The national security state people have an interest in securing and maintaining the secrecy over this whole realm because they want to be able to develop weapons and to utilize the technology for weaponry to establish dominion over all the rest of the other nation states on the planet.
Right.
That's a terribly low consciousness motivation. But that's the job. Unfortunately, inside a national security state such as our country, they've been assigned that task. And so they're pursuing that task diligently. And they're working overtime to try to keep this secret so they can have a unique military advantage over what they view as their potential adversaries of China and Russia, primarily the nation states that are opposing a particular economic system that we have in the West. And so these are extremely low consciousness kind of motivations that are going on, but they're completely understandable in our world. And what we need to do at the New Paradigm Institute is we need to kind of mobilize the citizenry, not only inside our country, but around the world, to be able to lift our whole human family to the higher angels of our nature, to really try to be more interested in establishing a productive and positive and cooperative relationship with the people of this extraterrestrial civilization, rather than trying to figure out how to seize their technology and make weapons out of it.
Yeah, because I don't, and that's the problem in this world is, and that's why, I know as an attorney, so you've represented Lou Elizondo, and I'm not sure if you still represent Dr. Greer, but they both kind of there's their narratives are different. The Lou Elizondo is from the national. He looks at it as from the national security standpoint, whereas Dr. Greer thinks that it's all peaceful and we need to join the cosmic brotherhood. What is your take on that situation? I mean, we know that flowers, daisies, and all that's not going to get us defense funding and funding that we need for these programs, but we also need to be able to oversee these programs and know they exist.
Well, both of the fact of the matter is that both Lou Elizondo and Dr. Greer both agree to a substantial degree of wanting to have more disclosure. And so part of my job is not just with regard to those two individuals, but everybody, is to try to get everybody to yes on this thing. Of saying, look, the fact is the United States Congress is being lied to, by an element of the national security state. That not only are they concealing the information from them, they're actively lying to the United States Congress. They're refusing to brief presidents of the United States about this information. That is completely unconstitutional. It's completely violative of the most fundamental standards of democracy in our country. And I know that there's a lot of people who believe that a genuine belief in democracy is somehow idealistic and unrealistic and kind of, I guess that they consider it foolish. But the bottom line is, I don't believe that it's foolish. I believe that that the future of our human family is rooted in the ability to have more and more democracy. And that I believe that, therefore, as Madison has pointed out, in a democracy, an essential aspect of it is the knowledge on the part of the people to be able to self-govern. And so we have a need to know this information. And the bottom line is both Lou Elizondo and Dr. Greer and virtually everybody else that we work with in this field, including Dave Grush and others, they share a desire to get more and more information out to the people and to get Congress fully briefed in on what's going on. So there's a very important level of agreement that the fact that the different people may interpret this differently and it place different emphasis on it. For example, Lou Elizondo, his entire career has been inside the national security state infrastructure, and he's been raised and trained to believe that any vehicle coming into American airspace, or as they refer to it, American airspace, without the authority and subject to the military directions of our United States national security state, is somehow intrinsically a threat. But Lou goes at great lengths to point out that he doesn't mean that it's like they're threatening us or they've done anything to hurt us. But it's clear that if in fact you have the evidence that we clearly have now, that UFOs are flying over the top of our nuclear missile sites and shutting off nuclear missiles, that they're able to rise up out of the ocean and shut down our largest nuclear aircraft carriers, completely shut off all their propulsion systems, shut off all their electric communication systems, so that they're basically dead in the water. That this is anybody who's been raised inside the national security state is going to experience that as a threat. But the problem is that these people inside the national security state view any effort to impede our ability from the United States to establish full military spectrum dominance over the whole planet is a threat. Now that's a particular worldview, and that people who come from that particular worldview are obviously going to be viewed by people like Dr. Greer as being excessive. And that they're distortive of this whole issue. And on the other hand, people like Lou Elizondo and others who are inside the national security state, they look at people like Dr. Greer and others who they perceive to be over idealistic about the necessarily benign nature of people that are an extraterrestrial civilization that has been here for decades and has not, in fact, tried to dominate us, has not tried to take us over in any kind of direct way that anyone can tell. That military people view that as being Pollyanna-ish and naive. And so that they perceive each other, different people, not just these two individuals, but different people from different walks of life view this issue differently. Now, I've delivered entire lectures on this, about how people from their own particular worldview perceive this particular phenomenon, and it's unique to their own worldview. What we're trying to do at the New Paradigm Institute is to develop a new paradigm worldview that can see everything very realistically, very practically, and very pragmatically, but at the same time maintain our sense of optimism and our sense of idealism about being able to establish a positive and constructive and mutually beneficial relationship with the members of the extraterrestrial civilization. Now, we don't know yet exactly what, to one of your questions, we don't know yet exactly what the relationship is among these different species. We don't know yet whether they have some sort of a galactic federation of some sort, what kind of degree of cooperation they have with each other. But we do know that they've been coming and going, virtually members of at least 4 of these different species, and perhaps a 5th, this more human element. We know that. We just don't know yet, what their relationship is with each other, and we don't know to what degree any aspect of our national security state has established communications with them and worked out any kind of either de facto or de jure, treaty relationships with them or any understanding. We don't know. We don't know. That's one of the important roles of the New Paradigm Institute. That we've conducted major investigations. The Romero Institute, which is the 501c3 mothership of our New Paradigm Institute, we conducted major investigations in the past. In the Iran-Contra case, we're the ones that uncovered the weapons smuggling, the drug smuggling, the violations of the Poland Amendment. We're the ones that investigated the secret shipping of nuclear weapons materials to Israel out of the Kerr-McGee nuclear facility. We've conducted these investigations over the past 50 years that have put us in a position of being able to help make this information available to our people so we can make public policy decisions. And that's what we're engaged in here. We're trying to find out what it is that's going on. We may be viewed by some people inside the national security state bureaucracy as adversaries because they view the efforts on the part of the American people to find out about what's going on as adverse to their interests. But we've conducted ourselves completely lawfully within all the normal restrictions with regard to national security information. And we're intending to get this information first to Congress, so Congress can make fundamental decisions as our elected representatives, and then to have Congress be able to make the decisions as to how much of this information should be and needs to be made available as soon as possible to our people of the world, while we at the same time adjust our major institutions and start to prepare our institutions to be able to integrate this information in as smooth a way as we can.
Right. And I think that's something that you're doing really well, as with what's going on right now. I really just, it's something that's going to have to come up eventually. And, whether it's a post admittance of that there is a non-human intelligence, but going back to, one of your first cases with John Mack, he was researching abductions, right? Alien abductions and contactees. So when we get to that question of the abductions, how do you foresee that? I know you don't like to speculate, but I mean, that's going to be a tough one for any president. And it sounds like in previous interviews that you are pretty sure that Biden will get a second term, and that will be the disclosure year or disclosure campaign, and that's second term.
That's right. I believe that's true. No, I believe that this is, of course, one of the major issues that we need to come to grips with. That whatever people may think about our institute and what we've done over the last 50 years is that there's no question whatsoever about our support for individual human dignity and human rights. I mean, we are major human rights advocates, and have defended and represented people for decades now in protecting fundamental rights. And as I say, I was the co-founder of the Harvard Civil Rights Law School. And so we are ardent advocates of the rights of individual people not to be subjected to involuntary abduction, and certainly not involuntary surgeries, where women have their eggs removed and involuntarily subjecting their eggs to cross-fertilization. That's a discussion, a clear discussion that we have to have face to face with members of this extraterrestrial civilization. It's one of those kind of tough discussions we have to have with them. We intend to have that conversation with them. It's not that they don't know that we don't agree with that. But you hear it over and over and over again. It's like the apes objecting to the fact that that we capture them and that we interbreed chimpanzees and that we treat them like lab animals. And given the fact that these extraterrestrial civilizations appear to be so much more advanced than we are technologically, that they may in fact be less than entirely sensitive about our rights, and that we need to have the new paradigm has to be able to get them to agree to grant greater degrees of liberty and judgment over our own bodies. No, but the fact is, there may well be a lot of people who would be perfectly willing to make their sperm available and make their egg cells available to have them be, doing interbreeding to develop a hybrid race or species rather. So that's something that people ought to talk about. So,
Right.
you don't have to go beating people up and taking these things involuntarily if there are people who may be willing to cooperate. Now that's a program that would have to be very carefully studied from the point of view of human rights and dignity, and we're going to have to come to grips with the fact that there's going to be a good deal of kind of not just racism but speciesism.
It'll be to be new speciesism.
People are going to be upset about the whole idea of crossbreeding with an extraterrestrial civilization. Not so much the people that are potentially from the Pleiades that look just like us, 99% are just like us. But when you're talking about interbreeding with reptilians or insectoids or the tall and short grays, people are going to get really antsy about that. And that's not, I've got to be clear, it's not just antsy about that. People are going to be totally traumatized by that. And so we have to have intelligent, careful, thoughtful discussions about all of this. That's another job of the New Paradigm Institute, is to slow everybody down, to calm down about these things. Let's have careful, thoughtful discussions about all of this and try to figure out principles and policies that we want to have implemented with regard to our relationship with the extraterrestrials of all the different species. But that's not happening right now, because you have an element in the national security state that just flat out says, no, there's no such thing. It's just all untrue. It's just a big fat lie, and the bottom line is we have to get past that. And that's the stage that we're at right now. We're in the process of crossing that line to get all of our major institutions to become honest about this and acknowledge that this is going on, so that we can get our people to move into this kind of serious discussion about the profound philosophical, theological, sociological, psychological issues that need to get resolved. And we're working on that at the Institute. We have over 35 major academics now, professors at major universities and all kinds of different people. They're working with us.
I did want to talk about that. So you're offering, so are these courses accredited?
Yes, that's a separate thing. The offering of actual accredited courses, that's a separate thing. Then we're offering accredited courses in a master's degree program and a PhD program in extraterrestrial studies. But in addition to that, we have the actual 35, or we'll have more than that eventually, people who are professional academics, who are, for example, this is being coordinated. The 35 people that are professors at various universities across the country are being coordinated by a professor in the philosophy department at Ohio State University. We're coordinating them to write white papers, to do analysis of all of these things for us and with us. And a number of these people are going to be teaching courses through our New Paradigm Institute that are going to be addressing a lot of these things. And it's because the government isn't doing it. We'd be delighted to have the government and the universities working together on this, but they're not. The major institutions at the universities are still under the influence of a 70-year-long propaganda campaign that's been waged secretly by the Defense Department and the Central Intelligence Agency to deter anyone from taking the subject seriously. And so we're in the process of trying to overcome that with individual faculty members who are willing to come forward and teach these courses, and they will. But they're also working at trying to persuade their faculty and their administrations at these universities to allow courses to begin. Now that we've come to realize that there's an extraterrestrial civilization, that we've got to come to grips with the details about this. So we're hoping that the official institutions are going to move into doing their work, but we can't sit and wait for them. We have to have an institute such as the New Paradigm Institute that people can contact by simply newparadigminstitute.org. Simple as that, newparadigminstitute.org, and come to our website. We're building a major website that's going to be able to interact with all 435 congressional districts. That we're going to be able to work with them and go back and forth and give them the information that they need to have in order to share their information with their local newspapers, their local cable television stations, go to their local Kiwanis clubs and their American Legion clubs and talk about this. We've got to do this. We've got to have this be a common conversation that our people have to be comfortable engaging in, so that over the next next 6 to 10 year period, we're going to go through this process of integrating all of this information into our human culture, and that we need to get the institutions involved in this but otherwise the citizens are going to have to do this ourselves. We cannot wait around for them to do this.
Well, we have about 10 minutes left, or a little less than 10 minutes left. Yeah. So with that exact notion is a good segue. How do you see the relationship between the scientific community and UFO research evolving? Are there particular areas where you think collaboration and just openness could be improved?
Oh, yeah. It's just that we have to get past this thing. I know that the university professors have spent an awful lot of time organizing to get permission to privately patent technologies that they develop, even with government grants, going to the universities to do research in particular areas, and that the university professors have secured the right to secure patents, privately owned patents on certain technologies that they develop. We have to deal with that. I don't think that's a good idea, as I pointed out. But I think people in the scientific community have been closed out of this whole thing. The vast majority of the leading experts of the world in all of these areas that are so important to do an analysis of this stuff have been shut out of this whole program. You have people that are just like mechanical engineers that are being brought in to look at these craft and try to figure out how their technology works, so they can try to duplicate the propulsion systems or to utilize them for propelling nuclear missiles, at light speed into other people's countries. But you don't have the philosophers, you don't have the theologians, you don't have the social psychiatrists, you don't have the economists, the economics people. You don't have any of these experts yet applying their skills and trying to address the issues that need to get done. So what we're doing is we're recruiting them into the New Paradigm Institute to work with us and ideally be able to persuade the government institutions to start taking in this information and then taking over the process, so that we have a government-run but privately overseen and regulated process by means of which we integrate all of this information into the various institutional realms of our human family. That's what's going on right now.
Right. So some final thoughts. Looking back at your career, including your work on Watergate, the UFO phenomena, and all related phenomena, what do you consider to be the most significant contributions to public knowledge and government accountability?
Well, that we've well, first of all, I think that the securing of the right of investigative journalists to protect their confidential news sources was an extraordinarily important step, because then you can get insiders to come forward and share the information with journalists who can responsibly convey this information to the people and exercise independent judgment from the national security state people over what information needs to be shared with people. I think that was extremely important. I think that the stopping of the secret shipping of nuclear weapons material by the United States Central Intelligence Agency to different fascist countries around the world. South Africa, to Iran under the Shah, and also to some other countries like Israel. That effort that we did to stop the smuggling of the 98% pure bomb-grade plutonium that was in the one reprocessing plant in the world for spent nuclear materials was an important step that we took. I think that our revealing to people the fact that the Central Intelligence Agency and the Joint Special Operations Command of the United States Pentagon was openly defying the Congress when Congress prohibited them from providing weapons to the right-wing, fascist government of Anastasio Somoza in exile, to try to overthrow the elected government eventually of the Sandinistas in Nicaragua was an important revelation. But all of that pales in the face of what it is that we're doing now. Right. All of those activities that were basic training for us to be able to effectively do what we're doing right now is to try to usher in an entire new era for our entire human family of realizing that we are part of a galactic civilization and that moving to preserve our integrity as a species, moving to protect some of the most fundamental values of human rights and individual liberties that are extraordinarily important to all of us in the face of a galactic civilization that may not, at this point, place a high enough value on those aspects of individual liberty. These are things that we have to be able to do. And to the extent to which our government is declining to do those things at the present time, our other governments around the world, we need to do this as private citizens. And that's why we've established the New Paradigm Institute as a place for everybody to come together. People like Stephen Greer, people like Lou Elizondo, people like Dr. John Mack, other people that normally don't agree with each other. To the point where now we have Matt Gaetz sitting down with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and fortunately agreeing that they are demanding together that Congress be briefed in on this. And we have the House and the Senate that don't always see eye to eye, especially when they're under the control of different political parties. Now we have them cooperating together. So what we're doing, we're trying to establish a paradigm pursuant to which people that are normally in disagreement with each other can come to an agreement around this extraordinary moment where we are encountering an extraterrestrial civilization, and to figure out how we can at the same time establish a positive and constructive and mutually beneficial relationship with this civilization, but at the same time preserve the unique rights that we think we have as human beings, even if we may not be as technologically developed as they are, even if we may not be as intelligent as they are, even if we may not be as spiritually evolved as they are. That we still have a right to make our own decisions. We have a right to govern our own planet. But we have to be also cognizant of the fact we cannot take steps that will destroy the life-generating capacity of our own planet. We can't do that. And that's why they're displaying such interest and concern about our nuclear weapons program. It's totally clear.
I was going to ask you that earlier. There's clearly a relationship between the nuclear capabilities of human beings and the UFO phenomena and their occupants. The cases like the Robert Salas case, and I believe it was Maelstrom.
That's right. And then Maelstrom, Air Force Base.
Yeah, even the guy that saved the Russian operator who basically thwarted what would be World War III and the destruction of everything by not pulling the trigger. There's clearly like with AI and everything that's developing. There is an ongoing fear of such thing as a false flag operation. And it really does worry me. And hopefully in our next conversation we can maybe talk and expand upon that further. But
Well,
just
let's not jump over that one. Let's not jump over that one. That that we can go until another 5 minutes. Look at
okay.
the false flag operation stuff that Dr. Greer talks about and stuff is a whole separate category. That the fact that the UFO people are shutting off our nuclear weapons or demonstrating to the Soviet Union they can turn them on or off at will. The fact that they can paralyze our most powerful nuclear aircraft carriers at sea. These are all things to demonstrate that they have these capabilities, but it's perfectly clear from the conversations that people have had with the occupants of these craft over 70 years now, that they are extraordinarily concerned that we as a human species ourselves are going to stumble into a thermonuclear exchange, which is going to potentially terminate the capacity of our planet to gestate life. Our planet is one of the comparatively rare planets inside the galaxy that is capable of actually gestating life.
Right.
And that this is not something that we are at liberty to destroy. This is a resource that exists inside the galaxy and it's not the only planet, obviously, because there are other planets that have obviously gestated life that is non-human life that we're
But
encountering now.
they're
But the bottom
clearly
line,
rare enough. They're rare enough to be protected.
that's right, and
So
they're going to do that. I think
yeah,
and that we don't want them to have to intervene, aggressively and involuntarily to stop us from doing this. But in any event, it has to be stopped. We cannot
right.
be allowed to exercise the liberty of destroying our own planet in its life gestating capacity because we happen to be a species on this planet. The other species are going to potentially intervene to stop this. I hope if we don't do it ourselves. And the
And
same thing is true with the contamination. They're constantly talking to people about we have to stop contaminating our planet. That we're
yes,
pouring these fossil fuels and fumes into our planet, contaminating our oceans. That we're threatening the ecosystems of our entire planet that are integral to gestating life. So that these two issues of nuclear weapons that we have and the threat of thermonuclear holocaust and the threat of global climate change, massive damage that we're doing to our own ecosystem through polluting it. These are two things that have been consistently discussed by the people who have had close encounters with the occupants of these vehicles.
right.
That I don't think that we should, this thing that you mentioned, the false flag thing. I do not believe, even though our people, our human beings, are capable of making very bad judgments, such as the development of thermonuclear weapons and the spreading of thermonuclear weapons around the world. That this is a bad idea. But the bottom line is that even though they have the capacity and they've contemplated, doing a false flag operation by capturing the technology of the UFOs and pretending that we're being invaded by a UFO invasion in order to justify massive military spending. This is something Dr. Greer talks about extensively, but that is speculative. I know more than anybody that he knows is I was general counsel to the
Right.
Disclosure Project for 20
Right.
years. That I know all about this. I do not believe that is what they're planning to do. I believe that there's an awful lot of things that the national security state are planning to do that we want to stop them from doing. But just because they've entertained that and have thought about that doesn't mean they're going to do it. And I can fully appreciate why Dr. Greer is concerned about that. The mere fact that they're even thinking about that,
Right.
is enough to frighten you. And
Yeah.
it may justify, overreacting to try to stop them from doing anything like that. But I do realize that people deep inside the national security state have ideas that strike me as rather stunning and surprising. That for example, their belief that they're entitled to, establish full military spectrum dominance over the entire planet. I think that's a really terrible idea. And it's one that is intrinsically unstable. That you can't insist upon having that authority yourself and not expect other nation states like Russia or China or even India or others to think that they're entitled to the same kind of motivation. That we've got to stop that. Step back. And I believe that this issue, differently than President Reagan referred to it when he was at the United Nations, when he said that, he often reflects upon the fact that, that we might all come together if we faced a common threat from an extraterrestrial civilization. I think it's the opposite of that. I think that faced with the opportunity to have a cooperative and prosperous relationship with an extraterrestrial civilization, this ought to bring us all together. This ought to bring us all together, not out of fear
But
and retrenchment, but out of a positive, upward, positive, forward motivation to work together as a species to protect ourselves and to protect our human rights and to protect our values, in establishing a concrete and constructive relationship with this other civilization. That's what I think we really. That's why I work together. I don't view it as contradictory to represent to have represented the Disclosure Project with Dr.
one
Greer,
or the
and at
other.
the same time represent Lou Elizondo, because I believe that they have at least a degree of common interest in getting more and more information put forward, in that they may want to put their respective spins on whether whether it's a threat or whether it's a benign thing. That's fine. That's what public discourse is all about. But we at the New Paradigm Institute are in dialogue with everybody who holds whatever view they have about this, to bring us all together to sit in council and to develop a new paradigm that respects everybody's worldviews and takes them into account while we prepare for this extraordinary step into the future. Because I sincerely believe that all time will be marked from this point forward with a pre-disclosure and post-disclosure. That's going to be
Yeah.
that's going to, like BC and AD
I was
and B.
I was
That's right.
literally just gonna say that AD, not Richard Dolan and
Yeah,
Bryce Sable did write that book AD After
yeah,
Disclosure. I think that
right.
would be something that a younger generation would be open to and very much receptive to. It's already been changed a couple times, so
hmm
um, final thoughts. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners about your work, cases that you're involved in, or the broader implications of the UFO and paranormal research, as
Well,
well as where people can find you?
yeah. People just need to get a hold of us at newparadigminstitute.org. There it is, newparadigminstitute.org. Okay. And our new website's getting built out more and more fulsome, and it'll be available very soon. But it's pretty well developed right now.
Yeah, it
Where
is.
you can sign up to be volunteers to work with us. This is a place where you can actually do something concrete, based upon your background and skill sets that you have. That we can coordinate all of that together. You can find out all about this. You can take courses if you want and get college credit for courses on the extraterrestrial studies. This is an extraordinary opportunity for us all to work together. It's a nonprofit organization. It's that we have salaries that are all limited based upon a law that's passed in California that limits the income for people working in public interest areas, but at the same time mandates that we pay reasonable salaries to people that are professional level salaries, so that we can have professional grade people working with us on this. But the New Paradigm Institute is going to be nothing but pleasantly surprising. Everything that you find out about the New Paradigm Institute is just going to make you happier and happier to work. So please get a hold of us right away. Join as not only a volunteer, but join as a person who is going to be. Somebody's trying to get a hold of me here. I think they're hollering at me to get ready for the next program.
I
But
know,
anyway,
I know. So
yeah,
newparadigminstitute.org. And Danny, I would love to have you back on the show next season. You are
anytime,
a
time,
tremendous,
anytime.
tremendous person.
Okay,
Have a good night, Danny. We'll see you. All right.
thank you. Thanks, Ty.
So
I'll see you.